All right, I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Sister City Council of June 25th, 2025. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mayor Lutz,
Here.
Council President McDougal,
Here.
Councilor Predin,
Present.
Councilor Ross,
Present.
Councilor Pellerin.
Here. Thank you. All right, do I have?
I move to approve the agenda.
I do have.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Do you have any visitor communication today?
We do. Doug Maines.
Hi, Doug.
Is this on?
There you go.
Very good.
You're good. I'm Douglas Maines, M-A-I-N-E-S, and I'm just keeping on the crosswalk situation. Almost got taken out tonight up my snow cap. And a guy, I was 3 or 4 feet out in the road and the guy ran right through. I yelled at him. Amazing. He slowed down after I yelled at him when he was through the intersection. But I also wanted to comment on how good that new intersection is down at Barclay. It slows people way down. It frees the flow of traffic to go through town on Barclay Road without having to sit there and wait for cars coming in at what is clearly the old road way faster than they should. It slows them down coming in. I think whoever thought that up should get a cookie or something. They did a good job on it. I'd like to compliment them on it. I also like to check with the city council if it's possible, and I brought this up once before. Now that we're not putting signs up saying snow chain zone 20 miles ahead, can we put something on the sign that says must stop for pedestrians and crosswalks? I think that would help. I've had far fewer incidents crossing down by Creekside than I have up at Snowcap. Snowcap is particularly bad, and I don't know why. And it's always the people leaving town, not the people coming in. So just an update on that to keep you guys up. I'm out there looking. Thank you very much for doing what you do. I appreciate it. And so does everybody else.
Glad to see you're still vertical on it.
I'm still upright so far.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
There's none other.
Pedestrian engineers and traffic engineers. Yeah, indeed. I think just these two, we have
No.
people come in once in a while just to remind us of safety, just safety. Anyway.
Okay, and there's no other visitor communication. And we don't have any presentations this evening. So can I have motions to approve the consent agenda?
I move approval of the consent agenda as submitted.
Second.
Motion in a second. All those in favor say aye.
Right.
On council business, we have which is a consideration of resolution 2025-10 supplemental budget for fiscal year 24-25, and Joe O'Neill, our finance director, will walk us through this.
Yes, thank you. So the supplemental budget.
I'm sorry, need to go.
Oh, yeah, of course. Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you. So the supplemental budget just has 2 items included in it. The first is related to the tourism department. Now, if you'll remember, going back to the 24-25 budget, we conservatively projected transit room tax. And with that lower projection also came kind of a lower restricted projection, right? So the lodging tax on the revenue side, and then the restricted amount that we give the Explore Sisters on the expense side, they kind of go hand in hand, right? Well, since the projected year end is going to be a little bit more than we thought, we need to make sure we consider that restricted amount for Explore Sisters in the budget. So that's the extra $20,000 is for. So it's basically acknowledging that we have a little bit more than we projected on the income side, thereby increasing the amount that we are obligated to give Explore Sisters on the expense side. If you remember, we give them 8% or of the first 8%, we give them 33%, right? And then the extra 0.99%, we give them 70%. So it's kind of a funky calculation, but $430,000, which is what this adjustment will account for, should be sufficient in order to kind of comply with that agreement with the Explore Sisters. And if you'll remember the budget meetings to account for that next year, 25-26, we did put $430,000. And so what that accounts for is a roughly, I think, $1.16 million in lodging tax, give or take. So that's the first item. Does anybody have any questions on that? All right. And then the second one is sewer repairs. So I think we've kind of talked about these as we've kind of gone through the fiscal year. The sewer system, more pointedly, the Rope Street pump station has seen a lot of repairs. We had those. We had the Headworks, which is that big cog out at HQ that I believe filters everything into the lagoons. And then we had our Vector truck get repaired. Those were kind of three big repairs this year that we had to our system that were unprojected. So sometimes we're able to kind of account for those a little bit in the materials and services for the sewer fund. We weren't really able to absorb all of those this year. So the $20,000 should be sufficient to account for those repairs.
And that just makes everything whole.
That's correct. Yep. And then that is it. So other than that, that is all the budget adjustments we'll have this year. So that was the only one that we've had this year. And like I said in the quarterlies, we tried to keep you up to date with any anomalies or anything like that. And that's really kind of all we've seen.
You know,
You probably comment first or?
Yeah.
Call for public comment.
Yeah. Somebody else can start. Is there any public comment?
See? If there's anyone on Zoom who would like to comment on this item, please raise your hand. I see none.
Okay. The hearing. We can have council discussion.
I just want to compliment you that this is my 22nd one of these end of the year budget adjustments. And I don't think I've ever been in an agency that does as well with budgeting as this one does. Short of something catastrophic happening that we don't ever think is going to occur, our budget adjustments are insignificant and minimal. Yes, I mean, look at the amount of money we're adjusting that budget by, given the amount of money that's in it, and that's
It's like 1/100th of 1%.
I mean, it's unheard of.
It's
I
insane.
mean, I have, in my other elected agencies, I had seen budget adjustments in the millions, and here we're having it in the $10,000 to $20,000 range. So that's a compliment to you and your staff and to all the staff here at City Hall to put the budgets together intelligently, know what it is that they need.
Well, appreciate that. Yeah.
I appreciate it.
I think the second part of it is the integrity that goes along with that. And because, you know, if you were staff, you can find ways to do things or whatever. And I just think that this staff all the way across the board does not even think about stuff like that. And just like, here's the right way to do it. There it is. That's give everybody's credit here.
I would agree. I would say just for future, things do happen. You know, so cities, when they do have to do budget supplements, it could be unforeseen circumstances, emergencies, things like that. Capital projects often will have pickups and things like
Yeah.
that. This happened to be a great year. And yes, Joe and his team do a great job budgeting. Yeah, managing finances, but you know, things do happen. Yeah.
And just.
Yeah.
Oh,
sorry.
I was gonna say to clarify, obviously, if Explore Systems is getting more money, that means that we also earn more money as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it means we collected more lodging tax. Yep. Yeah, and I mean, I think that another goal of ours is along the way to make sure that you're informed of these, because this wouldn't be a good conversation to have if the resolution didn't pass. So,
Well, if it was $1.5 million, it couldn't really explain, it would be.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
would be a good conversation.
yeah, agreed.
And, even with the capital improvement projects, like the city manager said, we're expecting probably different over the next 3 years.
Of course, yeah.
I mean, it's.
Yeah, issuing debt, there's all sorts. Yep, I agree. There's all sorts of different expenses that you can't just hit right on the nose. So, yeah.
Yeah, 1% of, even 1%, which I think would be a low amount of supplemental at the end of the year on those big projects could be a lot more than 40,000. Okay, I think we're okay with that. Because you do this in years where it's really simple and keep it low. So I think that there's a public trust and a trust of council that we have with you guys, which you've earned. So thank you.
Appreciate that.
All right, with that, I'll ask for a motion.
I move to approve resolution 2025-10.
Well, second.
I have a motion and a second. Any final discussion?
Good job, Jim.
Thank you.
All right, so all those in favor, say aye.
All right.
All right. Motion passes. Thank you. Don't go anywhere. We're gonna have a public hearing in consideration of resolution 2025-11, the master fee schedule. So I'm gonna open that public hearing and then we'll deliver that staff report as well.
Okay, so these are some similar items that we'll bring up here. So we'll kick it off with the water and wastewater rates. So if you remember during the water and wastewater rate studies, just to accommodate the need for requirements, especially attributed to debt service, mostly in the water fund was going to have a 12% increase for 4 years. And this is the second of those 4 years. And that 12% increase kind of goes towards the base rate and to the volume rate. So, right, you have a base rate and then you pay per 100 cubic feet. Okay. So that's the water rate adjustment, and then the sewer rate was 4%. So that 4% is actually further down the line. We don't have kind of a balloon of the 12% like we do for water. So that's a first adjustment there. Overall, I would say average household income or average household effect per month is probably less than $5, somewhere around there. Use 700 cubic feet of water. So we try to not impact those users too much. Obviously, if you use less water, it will impact you less. Does anybody have any questions on that? Oh, and the last one, sorry, I almost forgot, was at our new park, we'll have a water dispense station with potable water, and we just want to make sure we charge for that water. So we set that fee at $7 per 5 minutes. So 35 gallons, 40 gallons or so.
That actually was a question I had.
Yeah.
In fact, I would just look up, give you the line number and then you called out for me. So thank you very much. I don't have to.
Oh, you bet.
That's what I was doing. How are you going to do that? Is it going to be like a feet quarters in the meter?
Yeah, so it's actually going to be a very similar kiosk to the dump station kiosk. If you're familiar with the one at the campground, going to have the same setup, but you're going to have one kiosk for the dump station, and then you're going to have a second kiosk for the potable water.
And is the rationale for that this is an unattended station? It's going to be open for
Yep.
significant, like, or how many? If we're keeping it open year round or not, I can't remember what we decided.
That's the goal. Yeah.
But so the thought is that there may be a lot of people that might be utilizing that for
Excessive.
needs.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. We've seen that abused a little bit at the campground at times, and
Is it seven a little high for 35 gallon?
I mean,
I'm coming at you from.
no, I understand.
Yeah.
I guess what someone could do is they could partially fill up, when they did their gray or black water dump.
Yeah.
And then maybe fill the rest of it with this. Is 7 too much? I'm not sure. I mean, I think that It's just kind of,
It looks like a flat rate, right? It turns on for 5 minutes whether you use it or not? Or is it so much a minute?
no, it's just 5 minutes. It's basically the solenoid would be open for 5 minutes.
Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's tough. We don't want it to be abused. And so we're kind of leaning on that a little bit. And that's kind of where we came up with the rate, just kind of between that $5 and $10 range.
We'll see how that goes. I think 7's high, but I'm willing to ride with it.
So, okay, let's go, can we, maybe you public comment first and then.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
I keep forgetting we're here.
Yeah.
You didn't mention.
Is there any public comments, on this topic of our master plan?
Were you done with were you done with all of the fees?
No, I got a couple more.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So it's okay. This was just kind of for the water and wastewater. We got just 2 more. The second one is pretty simple. The Republic came to you all with the 4.8% of increase in rates. So that's incorporated here on the schedule. Thank you, Rebecca. Kind of confusing. There's 2 of them. One of them does incorporate a city managed garbage rate of $25, and which is kind of an administrative fee that is charged to those on city managed garbage. What that is, if you don't know or don't remember, that is you're mandated to have garbage within the city. If you don't pay for it, the city pays for it, and then in turn charges that fee back to the customer to collect it. So that's why we have that $25 charge incorporated into that. And then lastly, this is also something that you've seen from year to year is the system development charges. So the system development charges, per the adopted ordinances of those, do incorporate an annual inflationary adjustment. And so those updated charges include that inflationary adjustment.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry for cutting you off.
That's okay.
All right, excited. Yeah.
I mean, faster fees, what, it doesn't get much better.
The comment.
If you are on Zoom and would like to make comment, please raise your hand. I see none.
Okay. That will close public hearing. Discussion.
Sorry.
Or more, no.
I have a couple things, if that's okay. One, you mentioned, Republic Services and it's 4.8%. I did want to mention that they came at us with a 6%. That's what they asked for, but our staff reviewed things and recommended 4.8%. And that's what we agreed upon. And the reason that's important is because just because somebody comes and asks you for money doesn't mean they're going to get everything that they want. We reviewed the numbers. And thank you to staff, city manager especially, but I think other people were involved. 4.8% was the number that we recommended and they agreed to our number, not us agreeing to them, which I think is significant. The second thing is I did want to know if SDCs together, when you add them all together, I think a single family home's now over $20,000 if my math is right. I kind of hate hitting that number. I know I'm in the business a little and a lot of my clients pay that SDC, but the reason we have them is for future growth. And we haven't stopped growing yet. I don't care what Portland stayed over the last year. There were more people in town than there were last year, just because they changed the single family household from 2.4 average to 2.1 didn't mean people left town. Our number didn't really go down, it just slowed down. So it was a statistical change, not an actual change in population. We're still growing, maybe not as fast. Houses aren't moving as quickly as they used to. But the summer's just started. People are coming to town. We're gonna have new citizens open next year just because some of those visitors don't want to come and stay. So SDCs, not my favorite thing, but at the same time, you have to realize why we have them and how much they are and why they are. It's important that everybody knows. But those system development charges are so we can do these capital improvement projects down the road, and we don't have to go back into the state or looking for straight up grants or do bonds and things like that.
Or a giant supplemental budget.
Right, or a giant supplemental budget where we have to, borrow money later. So, thank you.
Doug, just a question on the water and wastewater study that came out. How often, or when was the last time that we had increases?
Before that, we've had them every year. We've done kind of we've taken the practice of doing a kind of a full study every 5 years and a refinement about every 2 to 3. So I believe the last one was 4% as well, and that was in 23, 24. Yeah, similar. Oh, I'm sorry. I was just gonna just kind of reiterate. I mean, similar to water rates and SDC rates, we try to do the best we can to make sure that the master plans are updated with your support, of course, and same with the water utility rates and wastewater utility rates, as to constantly evaluate them so we're being equitable with the charge and not have giant fluctuations. Updated master plans can do that, but we try to avoid that as best as we can by updating those regularly. So I think that helps too.
And just to reiterate, you didn't quite catch it. So how much water are you getting in 5 minutes?
Probably 35. Oh no.
The faucet may put it out at that rate. But
Yeah.
most RV water systems can't take it that way.
Oh, right. But it's gonna fill. Yeah, if you want to fill up a barrel or something, that you might get 30 to 35 gallons.
And then I tried to find it in there, but what is the rate for the carbon dumping?
Oh, so that's the same. That's $10.
Where is it?
That is up. I think it's in a different spot. You might not see it on there because that's just the updated section. Whereas the actual master fee schedule is about 6 pages. It's probably only 2 or so. Yeah, so it's probably not in what you're saying there.
They'll be the same as what will be.
Correct. Yeah, we're going to take a close look at that as well and see kind of, do we need to, is it going to, be kind of a high maintenance operation where an on-call person from Public Works is going out there a lot to troubleshoot it? If that's the case, maybe we entertain changing the price on the park dump station versus the campground. We'll kind of just check and see on that.
Yeah, I think that the fee of 10 is not unusual. Pay that more in some other places. You might find that if there are maintenance issues out at Gateway, that a higher rate would be justified.
Right.
Whereas a lower rate in the campground where people are paying camping fee might stay at the $10 amount.
Right. Agreed.
Yeah, I think I agree with Gary that the $7 seems a little high, but it's something that just give it a year and give it a shot and see what.
That's how much it's used.
Yep, for sure. We will monitor it. It's new territory. So
If that's $7, it must be you pay a fee every time someone uses that to the company that you
Correct.
lease the system from.
Yep.
50 cents a dollar.
I believe, it's a percentage. I'm trying to remember what it is. I don't remember off the
So
top
at
of my
some point, not tonight, but I kind of like how the $7 number came up because traveling around me, I was like, I think I better pay that much for
Yeah.
for water in that one.
Sure.
It's sister's water.
It's sister's water. It's actually be 14.
As part of the world, we don't have a water fill station at the campground, correct? It's part of the don't.
Correct. So you have, you have non-potable at the campground.
Right.
No, you actually.
And potable under lock
Underwater,
because it was getting abused. Yeah.
Getting abused. So I understand why.
This is new to us. Right? I think
It'll be interesting to see
local
that's
clientele and travelers that would be using it.
All right. I don't have a problem with the fee. It just seemed a little high, but let's just see how it goes.
Sure.
And our fee structure, obviously with the water, we created it ourselves by saying, hey, we want people to conserve more, people that conserve won't pay less. And maybe this kind of, just a little bit falls into that by being a little bit higher than them. Some good stuff.
I mean, it's insane. Okay, I'm not going to live or die on this, so I just was kind of curious more than anything. So I'll let you know that.
What questions?
So is there a charge for dumping?
Yeah, so there's a $10 charge for
Oh,
dumping.
that's what you're talking about.
Yep.
That's different than the $7.
That's correct. Yeah,
And that already exists.
correct.
10 in, 7 out.
Right.
It's because you
Been out
evaporate,
7
some of it evaporates.
I don't even want to discuss it.
Yeah.
That's council discussion that I do not want to be a part of.
One way is just to compare a gallon of water you buy at Rates versus what you can get at the water fill station, right?
You go a lot of different ways. Yep.
$18 a piece and
No,
start.
Yeah, I mean,
people-
right
25
now-
gallons, and that's a good deal, just like I said,
Yeah.
you might have to come out every corner of the RV when you blow the pump apart, so.
We don't want to do that.
No.
All right, do I have a motion?
I move to approve resolution 2025-11.
Second,
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? No? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
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 boy,
All right, motion passes.
All right.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Update so far.
Now,
Just always asking for.
yeah, we got more money.
That was really needy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very needy.
You put a cap.
He's been up here a lot the last few weeks, you know, I just,
Kind of shocking.
take some time.
All right, next up on our other business, we don't have any responses or anything to
That's real public comment.
the comments, okay? And then staff comments, wanted to at least talk about our update from a site visit from last week.
Yeah, so we want to do that first.
Yeah.
So we had a site visit of a couple of recent developments in town. Sisters Woodlands and Sunset Meadows. And so we had councilors join us on visiting those developments. The tour was given by folks that were involved with those projects and of course our community development staff. And part of the site visit, we're not allowed to do deliberations or discussions, so we wanted to make sure we had some time at the following council meeting. If there was any thoughts, notes to kind of take down as we pursue some of these council goals around design standards, development code updates and things like that. I think, you know, from staff's point of view, I think it's pretty valuable. We've done a couple of those at the staff level with some of these developments, but having counselors there to kind of see it and, you know, goes to the planning commission sometimes, goes to the council sometimes, you know, obviously you guys are the stewards of the development code and seeing it on the ground and how it's working out. Hopefully it was helpful. So this was an opportunity again tonight to see if you had a discussion or just notes or ideas that we could take down and include, or we can also do a future work session too, if that's, you know, so to down. Code and development.
I have some notes.
Great.
Okay. If I forget, I don't write it down. Okay, so I have two, like, it started with two, but I'm not sure how many there are here. Two things to note to start, if and when color is used as a differentiator between two adjacent properties. I'd like to see there be a more distinct difference between the colors. And it's not that I didn't like what Sunset Meadows looks like, but their color changes were so subtle that it was really hard to notice and it didn't really feel like a real differentiator. No,
I agree.
and I wasn't there, but I agree, just having driven by it. They all look the same.
yeah, I didn't know they were different colors. So
The developer did mention they were going for the Chile style kind of ski, Scandinavian, excuse me. And I understand, but at the same
Maybe
time,
has color, I think.
little color, I think a little color contrast would have maybe been kind of.
Is it possible to say a certain number of shades or
Yeah, how
50 shades?
would you codify that?
Yeah, like, or a percentage of, is there anything in design that?
No, and it, you know, it's like roundabout art, it's, you know, even Bill's, you know, Commissioner Chase, I think it's in the holder. That is true, but I think that there's language we could probably come up with that just addresses that a little bit and just mention about contrast. We just want just a little bit of contrast. And I don't know how you, I'll let the planners come up with the language and we'll see what, if that makes any sense. I mean, that's what we do, right?
I suspect there are places where there have been, in terms of just development code and things like that, which require some degree of variability in color that we might be able to look at and peel off from. Not that we have to invent the wheel here.
Exactly.
I've seen enough new development in different areas where there is differentiation via color and or design that I think would have perhaps benefited some of our recent projects with a little bit more visual interest. Especially when you look at the rest of town, which has quite a polyglot mix of homes.
I call it a quilt, you know, we have a quilt of the town.
And
And
those
there's nothing
look,
wrong with it.
and some of the newer developments look more like a blanket than a quilt.
Scott, how do color requirements interact with, well, one, HOAs, which often get formed in new subdivisions that will have requirements on their own color palette, so we only have color restrictions within our downtown, right? And then once you require some variation in color, how do we enforce that? You know, once, 10 years from now, when people move in to repaint their house and things like that, if there's not an HOA.
That only applies to the commercial, I believe,
For
Yeah.
downtown.
the colors.
Oh, we don't have to go into the details. I was trying to think through, like, how do you actually implement? That kind of
It's
stuff?
challenging, we had to monitor, when the space age repainted, we had to work with them to make sure that the colors that they were proposing were within the color palette, acceptable color palette, so. Yeah, it took a few iterations to get it to an acceptable spot, but yeah, if we didn't, they don't necessarily need a permit, they don't need a permit to paint, so it gets challenging to monitor.
Now, I live in a residence, obviously, so it's residential. I'm not in an HOA, and I think I'm the only house in town that has orange on my house. I have orange. It doesn't look bad. It's pretty good, at least for me. I'm the holder, I get that part, but I would hate to be restricted from having too much color. You know what I mean?
What I was thinking is, when I wasn't sure how color came into the code, and so I asked, and it sounds like it's one of the 5 differentiators, or it can be one of the 5 differentiators in a subdivision or a master plan, whatever,
Sure.
can choose. And so I guess all I'm saying is that if they're choosing to do color as one of them, it's not that everybody has to do color, but if they're choosing color as a differentiator, then they should differentiate.
Yeah.
That's all. That's really all I'm trying to say. It's not that they have to, it's just.
Or it defeats the purpose.
And I think Jordan's comment, typically the HOAs are established initially by the builder, who kind of writes the rules and decides what's gonna happen, and then they get changed once the HOAs come in. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. I mean, both kinds. I'm less concerned. I believe that unless one of these developments has strict, must maintain the same color that we have right now guidelines, I think people will, when it comes time to repaint some of those houses, will choose to differentiate themselves from their neighbors. Because monotony gets to be monotonous. And I'm not picking on the developers. I understand what they've done and why they did it, and I went for a look, and that's okay. But I think that we could require, there are ways to do it, and then you let the HOA and everything take care of that down the road. It's not a city problem at that point in time, it's an HOA problem. There is no HOA and somebody wants to paint their house orange with green stripes, then it's a neighbor issue.
We did learn that the developer is the HOA right now.
Right.
In our review committee, we can learn that during the tour.
And that's very.
At some point, that will change.
Typically, it changes over when 50% of the properties, so more than 50, like 51%, then the HOA takes over from the developer. Until then, the developer is the HOA. That's been my experience in working with developments too, which I built in.
Thank you, Sarah, for bringing that one up.
That's a good one, sir.
All right, wait till you hear this one.
I'm out.
Okay, so, I'm not sure what to do with this one, but I think our new density standards may be having unintended consequences. If developers continue to create the number of apartments that we see in Sunset Meadows, again, I'm not picking on Sunset Meadows, we're going to have a glut of apartments that aren't filled. Supply and demand might say that this would force the price of apartments to come down, but they can only come down so far because there are costs associated with building and maintaining them. And again, I'm not sure what to do with this right now, but at last night's community conversation, it did the kind of glut of apartments came up a couple times, and people wanted to know, why are we building these if people can't afford them? And so I don't know, something feels a little bit off balance around it.
And we had a housing needs analysis done, right? And that was part of the UGB amendment kickoff that said we actually had an excess of.
We're overbuilt.
Yeah.
On market rate.
On market rate.
And that's always the
Those are
rub,
current
right?
rates.
It's market rate. How do you make that affordable? It's retroactively, it's almost impossible because they've already put the money into it. They're not gonna sell it for less or rent it for less.
And I think that comes around to, having discussions about what kind of policy we want to see when we annex new land in terms of ensuring that there are some parts of that maintain a level of affordability that the people who work in this community can afford. So not everything is market rate.
I mean, I'm not a planner, but are there check-in points for future annexation where we can say, we're overbuilt on market rate apartments? We don't want you to have any. I mean, is there? I don't know. I'm asking the question because I think we're gonna need some guardrails possibly
Yeah, I do.
on this discussion. We're not, obviously, we can't tell every developer to do exactly what we said. That's just not even possible. But you're right, we're overbuilt right now, and Ben's overbuilt, and we're having issues, at least on market rate multifamily. So maybe we have to think about our density rules itself, and maybe that's where.
Well, but I also
I don't
think that
know.
we can have requirements in an overlay that a certain percentage needs to be either deed restricted or something like that.
Yeah, and
Workforce and or affordable housing. I mean, and that helps with some of it, but it doesn't help a lot. I understand what you're saying.
well, and you still need some market rate. It's just that how much do we need in the next 5 years? But then what do we need 20 years from now? We might need more of them later. So we have to be really careful about tipping it one way or tipping it the other way. You're exactly right. I don't know the answer. I don't even have a clue what the answer.
And in that example, that Sunset Meadows property was zoned MFR. So there was
Yeah.
a requirement to do multifamily.
Yep.
On that property.
I remember that was a requirement of even the site plan.
Mhm.
They decided to
And-
build it first rather than last.
And, the three of us that have been here on the longest, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like, the kind of housing needs analysis, from a few years ago, I mean, we didn't have enough apartments. And I feel like, but then a lot of this stuff was concurrently being planned, and a number of apartment projects have come up since then. And, we may be at that point now, but that's balanced, but that's my recollection. And a few years ago, we didn't have enough. I mean, there was zero vacancy, like zero, 3 or 4 years ago. And obviously new apartments just take time to build, and they're not gonna build overnight, but yeah, and then it's the balance of, capitalism versus, government involvement and capping prices and things like that,
In 2010, there was only 2 apartment complexes all of town. One by the Washerio back there, Cowboy Forest. And then gosh, what's the one with Section 8 housing? Beginning, that was what that one came, and then there's been a lot since. Oh, I take that back. There's one over by the post office as well, but there was not enough.
Yeah.
And now we have too much.
Yeah, and I don't want anyone to hear this as a criticism. It's just one of those like, okay, here we are. Let's make sure we're seeing it and considering it as we move forward.
I think it's a good point.
It's a thoughtful observance. Very good.
Okay, next.
You don't want?
You
So
said 2.
I see Kathy sitting in our audience here, and she had asked us to look at this and, to very good point, and Kathy had asked us to look at what kind of gathering spaces there are in our new developments. And I did take a look around. I do know that Sunset Meadows has like a community room, so we're not seeing that as we walk around. But the playground made me sad. It was so small. And I, again, it is what it is. And that area of town does not have a lot of extra land right now. I'm very excited that we have, I think, I'm looking back at my notes, 19 acres of parkland
Mhm.
that we're looking to do in our the urban growth boundary. But I think we need to make sure that that's equally distributed and doesn't have to be block by block, but equal access. Just keeping that at the forefront.
You mean across the geographic
Yeah,
of the city?
yeah.
Like over there, they have the schools, but other than that, there's not. There's a park there. I guess there's little ones, like you said.
But, and I would say as a parks person, I would like to see more, but it's just a realistic aspect. We worked hard in the parks master planning process a few years ago, even to get the number up to the base level where it was the minimum requirements for a town of our size. And that's where we are with that number. And part of the problem was that it had an impact on the whole UGB planning process of how much land we could or could not look at based upon, and SDCs and all these other kinds of things come into play. So would I like to see more? Yes. And I don't think there's any reason we can't encourage sort of what's happened in some of the developments where there are little sort of pocket parks in the middle of development and things like that. I agree with the playgrounds dismal. Both of those new developments have dismal playgrounds. But when I think about these 19 acres, I see as distributed parks that are open to anyone in the community to go to. They don't feel like they're in the middle of the development. Because sometimes like some of the ones that are over they're in there and they're open to everybody, or High Meadow, they're open to everybody, but they don't feel like they're open to everybody. And so we need to be sure that those park spaces are welcoming to anyone in the community, regardless of where you live. Or whether you're sick or not.
We require a certain amount of open space, and there's maybe in the UGB process, when we get these annexation things, we can say, give you credit if you do a little more somehow. I don't know how. I don't know if we can incentivize it in a rural format, I think somehow, right?
15%. What's that? What's our open space requirement? 15?
It's gonna be a master plan, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, this master plan is done, right?
What I want to be sure of is that we don't start counting those little bits and pieces in these developments as that parkland. I want that 19, that acreage of parkland is parkland separate from whatever else we require in the development process.
I think that one's a little easier than the color or
I do too.
multifamily. So thank you, Kathy.
Color grass.
And then just one last word. Fences.
Yeah.
I can't, after, I can't, it's like, oh, look at this fresh wood fences.
And they're connected right to the road.
Right to it.
It was amazing though. There were other defensible space requirements that were being adhered to by, one of the development. It was kind of nice to see. I didn't realize.
Well, they weren't even required.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
The
both,
stuff we're requiring now,
Right.
they're already, they were thinking ahead of
both locations had some,
some upgrades,
Yeah.
right?
which I was impressed with.
I was too.
Wasn't expecting.
Anyway, thanks for those thoughts.
Yeah.
I have just a really short thought. My short thought was, I was more surprised that I thought I would be able to, I don't know, find more stuff that I didn't like. And the fact is, walking them, I kind of liked them more, both of them more than I thought once I was looking at it close up and looking at, I was pretty impressed actually. And honestly, after, I know I was one of the people that brought up looking at these design choices and maybe we're updating them. But I don't think it's gonna take big movements. I think it's a lot of little, small movements. And I think that, unlike SDRs where it was kind of comprehensive and it was a lot of looking at it and, grinding on it and stuff, I think that this process may be a little easier. And I just think it's just smaller movements. I don't think there's big changes to make here.
But they were already in the lane, we just gotta get the guardrail.
Yeah, I think so.
And
That's how I feel about it.
and I think we ought to take a look sometimes when we have a large structure at the non-entrance side as well, meaning when you look at that development, from the street side, and you look at that building, it's fairly attractive, it's got some breakup, and when you look at the backside, it's very slabby, although they've tried to do some things with color. So I think that's an area where we sometimes, I personally overlook thinking, well, it's the backside. Well, sometimes the backside is everybody else's front side.
Yeah.
And I think that as we think about design standards for larger buildings in particular, I think we need to think about the presentation of the building to the rest of the community as well as to the residents of the building. And I don't know how we do that, but just a thought that I wanted to get down, even though I wasn't there because I was dealing with the break-in. Different kind of design standard.
My understanding is that the facade has to have a certain number of differentiating features, but at the sides and the back, that number is lower. So that could be something we could say like, no, up that number or something like that.
And maybe it's tied to how far away it is from the building next to it. If it's 100 feet across to the other side of the street, you kind of want that, what you're looking at is nice. If it's 10 feet on the sides, I don't think you have to do very much, right?
No, I think that's what.
So there may be a way we can just look at that one.
I think so. I think, where it gets difficult is, coming up with the clear and objective standards.
Sure.
Right? If we're talking about articulation and these variations and stuff like that, you actually have to get pretty prescriptive and have, examples in the code and things like that. Otherwise, you run the risk of having subjective code that they can cry foul on and get their needed housing.
Why do we have to hire somebody from the city? I don't know. Not here though.
Yeah.
But honestly, what we're talking about are kind of small movements. I really believe that. So, which is kind of easy to be honest with you. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say that I think the big takeaway for me was just this great opportunity of a feedback loop and having council, having staff, and all of the, our three planners at the time. And then the developers there in conversation and one thing I really loved was watching the rapport between our staff and the developers, and that it was positive. And, there was a lot of positive comments about staff and also to the developers, thank you for working with me on that, and we worked it out, and we, it seemed like there was, it was great for us to see that on that end, I think, just knowing that, as being guardians about also how the city is run, that the product that we're delivering to the community is being well received by some of the customers. So that was rewarding, and also the fact that one of the developers said I've developed in 20 different towns, and this is the first time a council has ever come out and talked to me about a project. That really struck me, because I was
You better do more of it.
shocked that I mean, made me feel a little bit of like a pat on our back, but I was like, let's keep doing this. I felt it was really valuable, and they felt it was very valuable to walk us through it. And they're like, well, this is why we had to do this, and this is the choice we made here. And and even they did, there wasn't a ton of hard takeaways, because we did ask, are there some things that you would like changed? And I think there was a few shared. But otherwise, just opening that door, I wasn't expecting them to have, hand me a list or anything, but just making sure that that door was open, that, you can email us anytime, I think they know that they're always welcome to talk to our staff. So, overall, just in that kind of goodwill and learning about what they do and how they're part of our community, and how they influence our community, I think was enormous. And I hope we can continue doing these
Yeah, I learned a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was gonna, I had that in my notes too, that Sunset Meadows said, this is the first time city council ever
yeah.
visited, and I was like, oh, okay, good for us. I really enjoyed looking at the master plans and having an idea of what's to come. And I thought taking the time to but stand and walk through these developments, it's a lot different than driving by or riding your bike by, you know, it's just, you have to stop and really look. And I thought that was really beneficial and kind of absorbing all of that. I really enjoyed that. And then, the relationships, I concur with Jennifer on that. I think it's really important if you think about, Kevin Eckert at Woodlands that gave us our tour from Build LLC, I think it's the company's name. They're gonna be continuing to do business in the city. They're gonna be doing the Habitat for Humanity, Adams Project. So these people aren't going away necessarily. So it's good for us to have these established relationships with them.
Just, that was the one comment that came in when we planned this, and that is that the decisions that are made as a result of this and from your comments and from what goes on will determine what this town looks like in 25, 30 years. I think that's the thing I'm not trying to make it sound like we're more important than we are, because we aren't, but it's important for us to try to get it as right as we can. So the next group of folks have a basis to build up, and so the town maintains its individuality. And if all you have to do is drive to a neighboring community that's slightly to our east, and you can see what happens when everything is pretty much the same. And it just starts to look very monolithic, and I don't think that's what we want for Sisters, and I don't think that's what anybody who's building here wants for Sisters. I think that's part of the charm of the town, and we need to keep it that way as best we can. So I appreciate the notes that you've all made. Feel like I was there. Thank you.
Anything else? Or did we provide any useful
Absolutely.
conversation or feedback for you?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay,
Throw it all out, and start again. Let's.
all right. Do you have any other staff updates or comments?
I do.
Okay.
Take a deep breath. It's my turn to do all the staff updates here. We have a few of these things been talked about tonight with the dark meeting, so we recapped them between the conversation last night. Thank you, council, for being there. Yeah, not much more to say other than I thought it was really successful. I don't know why I'm only surprised, but the fact that how many people show up and are engaged with productive comments, having respectful conversations about difficult topics. Thank you again to Carrie for really being the person to organize that. And then all the volunteers that were part of that too. I mean, we had people greeting people at the door, we had all the note takers, thank you. We had the facilitators. I mean, that alone, it's a big lift to get folks help, and they do. So great stuff, a lot of comments to go through, and we'll continue to work with our partners on the next steps on that. I shared this via email with staff and council, with staffing updates that have been in the works now for about a year. Paul moving in the capital projects manager position July 1, Jackson and then sliding into the public works operations manager to oversee our public works operations staff. And then we have made a hire to fill the project coordinator position with Charles White, who will be starting on July 14th. So some musical chairs are going to be happening in that department, but I think it's going to be great for that staff in that department.
Do we know who's doing what? So, like,
Yeah.
do we have questions to go to? Or?
So capital projects, so big projects is going to be all in Paul's lane. So all the water and wastewater projects that are coming up, that the rate increases tonight will be helping fund. This week we had the new Barclay, phase 1 improvements go into place, and Paul is your point person for questions about projects like that. The mobility hub, for example, is another large capital project. So the large transportation, sewer, and water projects in our capital plans will be managed by Paul. And then the day-to-day public works stuff, right? So, street signs, potholes, pump station noises and things like that. The crews respond to is within Jackson's purview. And then the new project manager will take on the suite of work that Jackson was doing previously, with special events, permitting, engineering reviews and things like that. Yeah, and this engineer, writing grants and things like that. He's coming in with some skills that we previously didn't have a lot of. Some of our planners have some experience with this, but like GIS stuff and mapping and things like that too. So that will help out. So that's kind of the breakdown.
Where's he coming in from?
The U.S. Forest Service.
No, okay, I did read it. Thank you.
Yeah. So their losses are gain in some ways. So all were lost because
Mhm.
some staff are making changes there, but we're happy to bring them on board. Couple other updates in terms of just general stuff. The Oregon City Managers Conference is coming up in July. That's second week. So I'll be in and out because I'll be attending that conference. It's actually in Bend, so it's a long ways to go. But part of that, we will be doing a tour of Downtown Sisters. So we get to show off the town to some other city managers from the state.
You want to plant us along the.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
watch some plants around town,
Well,
Rest
Reginald
the
Bates
park.
decided, right, so
Pardon me, sir, could you tell me where?
that's on Thursday afternoon. We'll do our downtown tour and actually talk a little bit about the Cascade Distillery, things that they've been doing, and then their plans as well. I like that. Conversations with council, kind of talked about changes we got in works there, the new format. We have the Fourth Fest, the 4th of July event coming up. I think Council President McDougal's slated to be tabling for that. Hometown Hang concert's coming up in August, and the mayor will be taking that on. And then we're also working on securing like a slot at the farmers market in the fall. So, kind of just going out to where the people are to kind of have those conversations. We'll continue to kind of work through that and what that looks like into the future. A lot of breaks coming up for other groups. So the CHRO and RRC, Explore Sisters, a lot of these groups are taking summer breaks. So that might coincide with some of the breaks that we have here too, with our boards and commissions and city council in July. You heard tonight about the Sisters Gateway Park Mobility Hub. It will be open on July 1. So at CET, planning to have a stop there in the morning. And then the dump station and bulk water fill station will be operational July 1 as well. So kind of a soft opening, and then we will still work on having that grand opening, ribbon cutting. Sort of thing. Maybe we can do it with the ranger station because they're coming in the fall, but maybe we want to have a separate, and happy to hear your ideas on that too. And then the Barclay Phase 1 is open, substantially complete. And you've seen them out there just doing last minute stuff. A great example of being nimble for the city of, going out there, the temporary new curbing situation in the traffic flow was a tight turn in one of the, traffic control situations, and being able to make those changes same day, having the fire department even come out and troubleshoot it and try it out and things. So thanks to the fire department and all Public Works getting on that. And if you haven't driven it, give it a shot. Pretty fun. It's a lot safer. People are slowing down. People will adjust to it over time. We've heard the comments and gotten the comments and suggestions, but it's all part of the plan to make that continuous movement from one roundabout to the other.
Better have lots of those white plastic things. We're not gonna last for it.
It's a good thing they're not too expensive, but yeah. And the long-term plan there is still a roundabout. Talking a lot about UGB. Someday it will likely be a roundabout. Our overlay projects are complete. It's great to have that done already in the beginning of the summer because there's a lot of other construction activity that happens in town, as you know. 4th of July, that event is coming up next week, but this weekend is the Big Pondaroo, and you see them already setting up their Village Green. And then let's move on to community development. You heard the update tonight from Nick Lilac and the county board that there was a hearings officer decision that was issued today recommending the approval of the rezone and MFB. So that got, it sounds like that did get scheduled for the county board of commission for, what did he say? August 6th. And so this might coincide, I guess, with perhaps with that next series of meetings. I know we have the UGB steering committees scheduled to meet July 29th, but for the planning commission, city council meetings, I'm not sure what their deadline is on that decision by the county, but we might be able to work that out so that we'll have a decision with the county board before the next round of meetings, planning commission, city council.
I just add that we should also consider waiting till the 21-day appeal period is done, so we have that information as well. There's been an
Yeah.
appeal filed.
That could be helpful. That could be helpful. I think we're anticipating one, but yeah, that would be 21 days following the issue of the decision.
The ruling is an interesting read. It only takes about 20 minutes to go through it. I think I recommend find the time just to read it. As you see the rationale and the basis which the hearings officer used, which is I think the basis upon which the appeal can be made. Is that not the case?
Mhm.
Yeah, so it's just interesting. I mean, I'll leave it at that. I just think you should all read it and form your own opinions based upon what's in there.
Yeah, I don't know if the BOCC hearing is a de novo or if you have to have standing. I don't know how they work, but I would just, I would assume any appeal would have to address the criteria. I would disagree, but it's all posted now, so for me.
I couldn't even guess what might happen. You know what I mean?
Also, but the hearings officer was the typical legal brief, and
Yeah.
so it reads like a legal brief, and it was important.
A couple of other things here. I think I misspoke tonight at the joint meeting. The building hardening is coming back on July. I think it's in August, but August will be the roundabout or discussion of the process of that. Building hardening is coming back July 9. We got 3 applications so far that are under review for the SDC deferral program. So, that's a fresh program. So Trinity Place have a complete application in. Habitat submitted for their units at the Woodlands and also the affordable housing project at Large Commons. So those have been submitted, and we're working with the legal team on reviewing those documents. You probably heard that we are in this renewal process right now for this short-term rental operating licenses. And we kind of enhanced our process this year with like requirements for submittals and things like that. So we're working through that, giving people grace because there's a lot of new information that we're requesting, or information that should be submitted with these renewals. So we're giving some space for folks to get that information to us and to comply. But that's about 120 renewal or applications that have to be renewed, whatever. So there's a lot of back and forth and things that go with that. And yeah, we did that site tour, so you kind of heard about the Woodlands and where they're at, but they're working, as you saw out there, on the infrastructure for phase 3. And as part of that will be those public improvements, including the crosswalk, the flashing crosswalk. So we had a gentleman tonight talking about that area, which doesn't completely address the safety issues around snow cap, which we've talked about how the highway widens there, and I think people are getting out of town, so they do accelerate right there. So we'll have to continue to work with ODOT and what might be some ideas to.
I was gonna say something while Mr. Maines was here, but I think that when we talk about another location for a potential flashing beacon like that, it's a prime spot for it. And I've noticed driving through town myself many times, because I take advantage of the roundabouts now, so I don't have to deal with the right to turn left traffic. And about the time you hit the middle of where the Cascade Distillery is going to be, people are hitting about 30. And by the time you get to Snow Cap, they're about 35 and 40. And so, and they're looking at that open road and they're watching for traffic coming in from the side road of the gas station, paying no attention to pedestrians. And that's probably as dangerous a crosswalk as we have in this town.
Is there any way to get bump outs there, when they're doing maybe an update on the plan?
Yeah, the constraint is the left-hand turn. Right. So, yeah, if you narrow it, then you might lose that lane, which I think it's not useful there, but.
We got a roundabout 100 yards away.
Yeah. And that, I mean, that might be the trade-off.
I
Maybe,
do.
maybe it's one bump out to kind of create that sense, right? Because people go faster because they feel safer to go faster, right? And that's what street design's all about, right? Narrowing it, street trees, things like that.
Well, it also feels like, you say, more like a highway.
I think when Woodlands is getting all complete, the new crosswalk across there, I gotta think it's gonna go down from 35 eventually. And
But I don't think so much, the 35 doesn't happen until you're in front of the range. It's 20 miles an hour.
I know, but people have been going through town for years are already thinking.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm not disagreeing. I don't know how much that will help with our non-local traffic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we need another 20-mile-an-hour sign on that side of the street. I don't know.
But again, to me, that's a prime place where flashing beacon light makes a lot of sense. And I see it in Newport all the time with areas where there was always a lot of pedestrian conflict, and those suckers come on and people notice them.
Yeah, even the ones that overhang, that makes it very obvious, but,
Anyway.
there's a movement not to have too much light and, clutter, but, yeah. Trinity Place is getting close to getting their permits done, so they're still eyeing groundbreaking in the fall, and I know Perry's been a part of a lot of conversations about all the funding that comes together on a project like that. I mean, I mentioned this last night, 5 years in the making, for these projects, and, it makes you mad, crazy at times, because this is affordable housing that we need now, but when you add in public funding and the reviews that need to be done and things like that, it does take quite a bit of time, unfortunately, but they're getting really close. And then the Baker Building, they're still getting close to completing the permit on that. So that is still in the works. And we talked a little bit about the last meeting about the infrastructure needs there, the electricity, things like that. So still a lot of development building going on in town, which is great to see. And I think I got it all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone want to go first? Council?
I don't know. I haven't, to be honest with you.
I don't have any.
Last few weeks? I mean, some of the things we were all together, so.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Point in time like that.
Well, I did attend, not as a city councilor, but just in general, a new event this year, put on by Living Well with Dementia Sisters. They put on the first annual 1 mile walk for dementia support last Saturday. And that is in conjunction with the Alzheimer's Association, the longest day events in recognition. So it was really well done.
New elementary school
It
in that area.
Yeah, in that area, made it a friend. Yeah, it's good.
Excellent.
It's fun. Well done.
Cheryl?
Yeah, so I've been mentioning this defensible space grant program that Jefferson County has that reimburse homeowners up to $600 for doing the work, and trying to find out if we can get that in Deschutes County. So I reached out to the Deschutes County Forester, Kevin Moriarty. I always have a hard time saying that. Moriarty. And he came back with some information. Primarily, Jefferson County is using a different fund, different funds for that program that Deschutes County doesn't use those funds for. And those funds will actually just continue in 2026. But two things we can have our citizens or make sure that they're aware of in terms of fuel reduction around their homes is the Deschutes County Fuel Reduction Grant Program will start up again around September, October this year. And there's a link to get to that grant opportunity once they post it, that maybe we can kind of splash out on city social media. And also in addition to that, COIC has the Central Oregon Wildfire Workforce Partnership, which is a local program that offers free of cost fuels reduction work. So they work with the youth
Part of Oregon.
Heart of Oregon.
Yep.
Yes. And they'll, you just submit an application that's online. It's a little lengthy. But you submit that and then they'll get back to you in terms of prioritizing those projects if they think you qualify to do that. So somebody who may not be able to afford to clear a large lot that they have, they could potentially utilize the COWWP program.
Do you know if they have, using Heart of Oregon, even Canada, if there's an opportunity to pay them to come in and do the work on your property as part of their fundraising programs for their program? So in other words, I know you talked about a
Yeah,
grant
right.
opportunity and they're
Yeah.
bringing them in, but what about a private citizen that has a significant amount of property that wants, because I see stuff on Nextdoor, people trying to find somebody to do cheatgrass and clearing up their back areas. And wondering, you know, an organization such as that where youth are being trained to work in those sorts of fields and trades, having worked with those kinds of programs is always a funding issue. And is there an opportunity there for them to, without creating problems with their funding stream, to be available to come in and do work on private property? And it may be that they can't because of insurance or whatever, but it's worth trying to figure out.
You're talking about work on private property for hire.
Yes, oh, yes, yeah,
Right,
yeah.
because I know they're
Would-
doing private property
Yeah,
now.
but not part of the,
But
but they
not-
might be covered by the insurance under the grant program that they might not be covered. Yeah, it's an interesting one. You know, most people have no idea how to contact even those folks to find out.
Yeah, I actually have a contact, so let me follow, I'll
Would
take
you-
that action.
Yeah.
Sure.
I heard about some goats that are available today.
Goats,
Yeah.
yes.
I heard about that earlier today. 500 pigs.
I'm trying to figure out how to get him up on my daughter's property to eat the 2 acres of blackberries that are hiding her house.
That's good information, to be
The
honest.
goat people
I
don't
mean,
want them there.
You know, it's funny, but goats.
They use them, okay, sorry.
I was at the houselessness community conversation last night. Again, kudos. I thought it was fantastic.
I was at your table, good job.
You were at my table. Yes, you
That
were.
was the clear pine table, I love,
Yes.
it was all the people from the same neighborhood came to one table. And it was good to see their camaraderie as well, and how they, you know, work together and talk to us. It started off a little weird, and then it just got better and better and better, so.
Yeah, once they got a little more comfortable, start asking
Sure.
questions, it went very well. So great. I think it was great. Do we have the city manager tonight?
Yeah, I'll bring it up. Yeah.
I don't know if you were. Okay, so we all just recently finished our city manager evaluation. He's still here. So
I'm not-
that kind of tells you how it went.
Very good.
There's not a vacant chair.
No vacation. But some of us raised concerns about the process and feeling we owe it to our city manager to have something a little more structured. So I have volunteered just to interview and get feedback and start putting together kind of a draft of what that structure would look like without getting too deep and heavy into it. I volunteered to do that. And I just wanted to get buy-in if people felt that that was the right approach or if somebody wanted to work with me.
And
Okay.
yes, I was supposed to bring that up and I forgot, and then I wrote it down later, so thank you, Carol, for bringing it up. Cause, yeah, my brain's a little. But yeah,
I'll help if you want it, if you know, I volunteered to spend a little extra time doing that if you want some help. Cause I hired 2 of them, I guess. So,
Yeah, my thoughts were, I could get feedback from my fellow counselors. I can get feedback from Jordan, I can get feedback from Joe. And you mentioned some staff, and have some feedback too on it, and I'll start with that. And then try to address that in some kind of a more structured policy that we can adopt going forward.
I think it's a little clunky, you know, with executive sessions and stuff. and-
Yes, and I felt like we needed more time as well, so I'll work all that into it, so. You'll see an email from me if you all agree
Yeah.
that that's okay.
I appreciate it.
I appreciate
just
it.
think of like future me does not remember past me. So it's really good to have it written down.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like I'm hit by a bus this month, so I appreciate anybody who's taking the lead on anything.
Was it
No.
the crosswalk?
Yes.
Just yeah.
It was like a
gray bus?
One of those new,
Great
Yeah,
bus
just
for
ran on CET buses with no, I didn't know who it was, there was no logo on the side.
Great
End of the day.
I was just gonna say the rodeo parade.
Oh, it was great.
Oh yeah, it just seemed like it was longer. We even had a local artist who put their own float together, Skip Armstrong. I thought
Yeah.
that was great. It just seemed like
The corgis were a
community-
hit.
Yeah, what?
The corgis were a hit.
The corgis were a hit. Yeah, I just it was such a great community event. And
I was in the parade and it was
you were in the
fantastic.
parade.
Well, we all ignored you on that, but you know.
I saw your middle fingers. I saw every one.
A comment on that. It made the Washington Post. They actually sent a reporter. Oh, yes, they sent a reporter. They were doing a story on JJ.
Which I saw.
And they did a really, I can forward the link to any of you that might be interested, because I subscribe to the Post, so I have a link I can send you. That would give you the whole story, and it was full of pictures of town, of the rodeo parade and of other things. It made us look very good, very quaint, and lots of tourists should come and visit us, so I almost burned it. But no, just teasing. It really made us look very good.
Yeah.
And it was it was a nice article about, and of course it was because of Party Bus, but it was a nice article about JJ and how he feels. And
I just thought that the word calamity was a little.
I thought the word calamity was a little
harsh.
Yeah,
but
well, that's-
other than that.
You're talking to Washington DC. What do you expect, right? You know. So if anybody's interested, I can forward that link.
It's easy to find.
And I did corner Bill Chang before he left and asked him about the Juniper bill, just because he has a lot of background in that for years. Because I was asking him how that would work, and he said that all that money is going through soil and water conservation districts.
Yeah.
Because I was like, is it public, private? And he says that to his knowledge, it's supposed to go to private landowners. You know, so it kind of limits, you know, to a certain degree, city participation in that, but, you know, there could be some workarounds, or if there's a need, you know, it's certainly worth contacting, you know, local water districts and having that conversation with them, so.
That would be-
Are we in the soil and conservation district?
Are we in
that
the-
would get that money? I'm just wondering.
We have the Three Sisters Water Conservation District, which is just behind Lazy Z. So I don't know if that affects us or not.
I don't know. It'd be interesting to have that,
And again, it was private property, I think.
Yeah.
but we might be able to help private property owners in
Yeah.
our area to help.
Yeah.
Just because they might not even know about it.
Right. Right. I attended the Small Cities, LOC meeting, which was good, 'cause I was the only person who came. Besides the counselors and mayor from, Lapine. So it was good, they had a, you know, LOC representative there, and also, a woman from Oregon Heritage, I think is what they're called now. They're basically the umbrella organization that's everything that has to do with historic preservation. She kind of gave a presentation of the 15 things that they do, which was actually really fascinating. I think there's some things that we could, maybe not so much the city, but definitely entities in town, whether it's large events or the historical society or something, that there's a lot of them. You know, grants or volunteers, things like that can help out in that respect. Even they have money for disaster preparedness, right? If you're, you know, what do you do if you have documents or collections and you have a disaster, right? Like, you know, so it could be money people could use to digitize documents, you know, put them on the cloud, right? So if they get destroyed, at least they're, you know, you still have them. And, you know, so they just have all these kind of little pots of money and resources. Obviously, knew about the you know, cemetery issue that's been going on as well, because they're in charge of cemeteries as well. So so that was good. It was good to meet counselors there. Also, and earlier that week I had lunch with Mayor Earls from Lapine, just because she's a new mayor and she has never been counselor, so she just, you know, wanted to her city manager. So we had a good conversation of just, you know, and our cities have so many similarities We also had a lot of differences, but, similar size, similar fire danger. A lot of public land surrounding us, a lot of, gateway community, a lot of outdoor recreation, things like that, so. So that was a great conversation to have with her, just to kind of build that relationship. And, she kind of offered, if there was anything, that we both felt like we, as both communities, have something in common, if we ever wanted to like co-sign a letter on some issue, to sure, we'd always be open to things like that. I also attended Coco in Redmond, and then, I talked earlier about the IVHS for the Oregon Fire Marshal's Office to sponsor today. I did get to be in person, Chief Louise Temple, which was, she's happy to meet us, from sisters, know what we're doing, so, and talked to a few people from IVHS, and it was well attended. They said they started planning this like a year ago with the hopes that there would be like in Salem, there would be legislators there. I guess they didn't quite have the schedule yet. We're a few days off at the end of the session, so unfortunately there wasn't really anybody there, but from the state house, which would have been very helpful, really helpful actually. But that's okay. There was a lot of people from different fire districts and other government organizations. I think there's some staff members from the city of Bend were there and other cities, so definitely worth it.
Next session, I mean,
Short session, but it's okay. So that's about it. I think, besides all the other events that we wanted us attend together. Okay. Anything else?
it was a great report. Saw you in good thing.
Rodeo, I thought you said review. Yeah,
No,
rodeo. Yeah,
rodeo was good.
yeah, that was just always amazed how well organized. That production was. Really.
Very.
Fun to go. Yeah.
those beers up the
They didn't fall down from the beach.
bleachers.
All right, so with that, I adjourn the meeting.
You need to adjourn to the executive session.
Okay, I didn't know if that was separate or not. Thank you, so I need to read that. as
Yeah.
well? Okay, and I'm going to adjourn to executive session. City council will now meet in executive session pursuant to ORS 192.660 2E to consider real property transactions. City council will not be returning to open session following the executive sessions. Only representatives of the news media and designated staff will be permitted to attend the executive session. Representatives of the media specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general subject to discussion and House. No decision will be made during the executive session. And we will be moving to separate conference room. Thank you. Then again.